a different one I ventured into only when it was convenient or when it was made perfectly clear to me I had to spend more time with them. I was a star in my company, in the local business community, and certainly in my own mind, but I was almost an intruder in the world they had to create without me. If I had all the pieces of the puzzle that I needed for a great life, why hadn't the picture turned out the way I'd imagined it growing up? I had developed a list of credentials and accomplishments that gave the impression of a successful life, but inside I was deeply unsatisfied and unsettled. In 1987, we moved to Richmond when I took a position at Dominion. I well recall a Needle's Eye luncheon late in that year. Jess DuBois, a local radio and television personality, told his story of having everything he'd ever imagined and yet feeling totally empty. I could identify with how he felt, and I listened intently to his advice that only through a personal relationship with Christ could you find true happiness. But I really didn't understand what he was saying that day. Let me get back to the puzzle analogy. It's fairly easy to put a puzzle together when you start with a completed picture. When you have the central piece located in the right position in the frame, then you can gradually fill in the picture by connecting the other pieces to the one you know is right. When I put my puzzle together, I put myself in the center, but the other pieces just wouldn't fit properly. The only centerpiece that would align all the other pieces correctly was the one that Jess DuBois was trying to give me at the Needle's Eye luncheon in 1987. I just couldn't see it that day. This realization took a number of years to develop, and as I've said earlier, I am grateful to Nancy and our daughter for providing me the understanding of what a personal relationship with Christ really means. Our daughter began attending Young Life meetings in high school. As she developed a personal relationship with Christ, she was bold enough to ask Nancy and me if we really knew Christ as our personal Lord. At that time, the honest answer from me had to be no. I recall not too long after that Nancy and I were discussing our relationship, and she told me that her relationship with Christ was becoming more important than ours. She had clearly placed Christ in the center of her life, and that was somewhat frightening to me. My wife and daughter had decided that Christ was going to be first in their lives, so where did that put my relationships with them? But what I witnessed after Nancy put Christ first in her life was that she handled me with more love and grace than she'd ever done before. There was a noticeable and permanent change in her whole outlook on life, one filled with hope, joy, and love, regardless of the circumstances she faced. Nancy and our daughter modeled for me what a relationship putting Christ in the center of your life really produces. It makes all the other pieces of the puzzle fit perfectly in relationship with each other. Love for Him creates the ability and desire to love others more than yourself. Loving others more than yourself creates meaning in each day because you concentrate on others' needs and concerns rather than your own. When I put myself in the center, I woke up each morning asking what might make my day better. With Christ in the center, the question changed to how can I make someone else's life better? It is through this concentration on others and not yourself that God intends to create true joy and real peace in our hearts. For me, having a personal relationship with Christ means letting His will overcome and even become my will. It means loving Him more than myself or any other person. It means putting this relationship ahead of all others, as Nancy explained to me many years ago. As humans, we can create pieces of our life puzzles, but we can never arrange them correctly without the Lord. On the surface, my life might not appear to be much different than it was before I truly let Christ be my Lord. Things look much the same, but feel entirely different because they fit together in the right way. I know without Him in the center of each day, orienting my time and energy as only He can do, I would be just as unhappy as I was for so many years of my life. We have over the years put puzzles together during vacations and other family gatherings. I'm always struck by the amount of time and effort it can take to successfully complete a puzzle, only to see it come apart so quickly when we break it down and put it back in the box. The nice completed picture, formed by putting the pieces together, is once again shattered and broken into many separate and unconnected parts. In like manner, our lives are often torn apart quite suddenly, and what we thought was solid seems so broken up. At times, some pieces are taken away, while others we have never experienced or wanted show up. I have to remember at times like this that if I still have Christ in the center of the circumstances, he will make a perfect picture out of the pieces. Even on a daily basis, I am tempted to put myself back in the center of what I'm doing. At times, I want to kick myself for forgetting that I cannot order my day any more than I can order my life. I have learned that our graceful Lord knows our human tendency to put ourselves back in control, and he waits patiently until we call on him again to put things in the right place. Now let me go back to Grandparents' Day in Greensboro and the lesson I had for Brandon and his schoolmates in September. That morning I used a PowerPoint presentation which helped the children actually see what I wanted them to understand, but this afternoon I'm going to have to ask you to visualize it. I showed them a collage that had within it the events we all know in the life of Jesus, from birth in the manger through his ascension into heaven. I then turned each event into pieces of a puzzle and put them back one by one into the frame. My first question to them was, so how do you think manufacturers of puzzles make a puzzle? Do they start with the pieces, or do they start with the picture and break it into pieces? A chorus of first to fourth graders answered, they start with the picture and then break it into the pieces. Good start. Next I asked, who knew the entire picture of Jesus' life before it began? Going to a Christian school, they answered, God knew. Yes, only God knew the outcome before the story was finished. Then I showed a partially constructed puzzle of Brandon's life I'd put together from family and school photos. I asked why there were so many pieces of the puzzle missing, and one young man said, because he hasn't lived much of his life, we don't have all the pieces. Finally, I left them with what I've learned over my life and what I firmly believe today. Don't worry or be afraid of what will happen in your future, for just as surely as God planned Jesus